name is Ed Lash. I'm a fly tyer from Iowa, and I specialize in deer hair work. And the object today is to tie this bug. So, we have one more series of stacks to place on this fly. One on the bottom, and then the hair on the top. And we can repeat this color scheme of orange on the bottom, yellow, green, and black on the top, and then when you're trimming the face of the bug, everything looks uneven here above the hook shank. And so what I would advise you to do on popping bugs and sliders is to pick out a solid color. It looks neater that way, at least in my hands it does. It's just simply a trick. White is a very popular historic color to place on the face of poppers. So we have about 1/4 of an inch of hook shank to fill up. I like putting a head on my bass flies. There are reasons for that, and I'll show you. Moderate amount of hair. This is going to go below the hook shank. Up here in the front of the bug, having the hair on the bottom that goes to the bottom of the hook, having it a little shorter can be helpful if it's manageable. So I'll do this a little shorter. I want to use this part of the hand to hold this yellow hair back, and we're going to take a wrap here and bring the thread to the eye of the hook. You can see why having a bigger eye on this hook is helpful when we get down this tight. And so also we don't want to pull, we want to partially thread or flare this hair out. So I'm going to end up pulling my thread back toward the back of the hook, away from the eye of the hook here, to partially flare it so it won't have a tendency to come off the eye of the hook. And then we will walk the hair and the thread to the bottom of the hook, get things placed where they should be. There's a yellow hair that started over here. It's over here now. And so walking that orange hair around walks your colors around with it. And so all you got to do is bring it back. Okay. That's pretty good for the amount of hair we have on this hook. So we're going to flare it the rest of the way. Now, there's a tendency, we're going to put a stack of hair on top. And there's a tendency as we wrap that to catch some of this hair here. And it's a greater tendency if you bring in this hair from the back, pushing things down. If you bring it in from the front, it helps more, and it also helps the angle, as I mentioned before. So I think I was trained to bring the hair in from the back, but in my own tying, I've found that it's helped me have better control to bring it in from the front. Last bunch, I hope, unless we blow something up. And speaking of that, that does happen. If you pull too hard on this thread, it's going to cut through the deer hair. And if it does that, you know how many wraps you have on. 2. You could put 3, but I don't know why you'd put an extra one. What we want the thread to do is to slide, and I don't know how you help that by placing an extra wrap. So I use 2 wraps every time and a knot. So I can unwrap after I've cut the deer hair, and that does happen from time to time with the thread. And that brings up another point too. And should you spin this thread to flatten it out? And the answer is, I leave it alone. Now, I'm left-handed. There are some advantages to that. But the more you can leave this thread alone and not have it twisted up one way or another, the better. So we're going to bring this in from the front. Use it to help push the yellow back. Grab it. You can see it's pretty flat. The angle of this hair. Wrap. Wrap. And this is the place on this wrap on the side of the hook away from you that you're most likely to wrap hair in that you don't want wrapped in. And so you can flare that a little bit and then turn the vise and look. We're good. I'm going to bring this orange hair back, get it on top of the hook, and flare it the rest of the way. Find the eye of the hook. I think it's worth taking a minute to straighten the hair out here because this is going to be the face of your popper, and the more orderly that is, the better the face of the popper looks. Up near the eye of the hook is where I use this packer. This is an Anvil packer. I had it, I didn't like using it much back in the body of the bugs. So we've exposed some thread here. But to complete my thought, that Anvil packer works great near the eye of the hook. We're going to bring our thread up. Hold the hair back. Gently pull the slack out of the thread. Make 2 wraps. Hitch. I'm going to pack that knot back. You have to turn the packer sideways to do this best. So we're going to pack our knot and our thread back. And you can see that it's packed back by where this thread is here. It's all the way back. I followed up with another hitch. This thread, this GSP thread, is made out of the same material that Dyneema is, and Dyneema fishing line, and so it's really slippery stuff, and special knots needed to be used for fishing. So I don't trust these knots, so I'm going to wrap other thread over this and finish the head of this fly. How I cut the thread is I pull on it and I cut it. I open the thread up in the scissors up in a very tiny V and bring them in, and I actually cut it. If you just slash through it, oftentimes you'll leave some of these little fibers in on the front of the fly, and you can't trim them then. They won't trim. So I know it's a picky thing, but those kind of picky things often work. So the tying is completed. We're just going to finish the head of the fly now. And I do that. This is heavy plastic. This is from a Mustad hook package. It's heavier plastic than you would have in a regular material bag. And I cut a hole in it. I don't poke a hole in it. I cut a hole in it and do what I can to keep these edges smooth. And I've used this particular piece of plastic for months. I'll use it over and over again. It works better. It holds the hair back better. So we're going to hold the hair back. We're going to pack the hair back, really, in a way. And then we're going to take our thread, catch it under the thumb here, bring it over the hook, adjust the length, and then do our wraps. And what I'm going to do is place a dam of thread in front of this deer hair, and it'll really help it stand up. We're not putting a weed guard on this, so we can put a decent sized thread head on. If I was putting a weed guard on this fly, I'd limit the amount of thread that I'm placing at this particular point. Trim this. For years I used a whip finish tool here to finish the fly. Now what I'm doing is essentially bringing the thread back from this angle and whipping from the back of the head toward the front. And I'm finding I'm actually having an easier time doing this by hand now, and I can't understand that. Trim the thread. When you trim the thread on this last portion, hold the scissor there, or you'll just drop your plastic into the garbage. So at this point, the only step remaining is to cement. And you can see how that thread dam is holding the hair out away from the eye of the hook. And that's why I like having a thread head on these flies. I like to be able to have the eye of the hook exposed. It makes lining the fly so much easier while you're fishing, particularly in low light. So we're going to put some glue on here. Got a glob of glue there. I'm waving the glue around while I'm talking. And I'm putting quite a bit of glue on. Now, what I'll do is leave this now overnight to let all that glue dry. I believe in glue, I believe in knots, I believe in the thread base and the wraps that we're doing. And what that does is help create a fly that is strong. You can't twist this fly. You could have used a lot of strength, like you would on a wing nut or something, but that fly is solid. And so that's a system that works. I don't like flies where the hair can move around the hook shank, where you can twist it around.